Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Good across everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. We hope that you are well, healthy, and smiling wherever you are in the world and the country as you listen to this podcast. Hey Tane, how have you been since we last spoke?
Yeah, I've been good. It's been another busy week with school holidays and helping out with the holiday program, but it's also been a pretty good weekend to reflect. And I guess something I learnt, especially over this weekend, was the value of connection. And I think, sometimes we have all these connections and it's good to have them, but it's also good to actually value them and respect them, because we don't always show our appreciation for our connections. We focus too much of our time on, like study or work or other aspects of our life. And so sometimes we let some of those weaker connections slip, when in actuality, if we just put a little bit of time into showing that we actually care about those relationships and care about those connections, it can foster a much better relationship long term. And so that's been really good, just to reflect, particularly in the weekend, with a couple of people I haven't seen in a while, but see that those connections are still really strong, and if I can just foster them a bit more, then it's going to last a lot longer.
Yeah, I think connection is really interesting. I was watching a Disney documentary about elephants and connection. And they speak about connection and how elephants just connect, and it's a really important part of their whole survival. And when you think about humans, it's an important part of humans as well. But it's so funny, as the world has gotten smaller, we seem to be way more connected, and it's such a weird thing. And I'm glad that you've had that, because it's an important reflection to make, that connection has to happen, not just electronically, but also physically sometimes. And electronics does a great job as an intermediary, but if you can see someone physically, it makes such a big difference. Yeah. And since I last spoke to you, I guess lots has happened. In the workspace, there's been some real bombshell moments, which everyone knows about out there. So we won't talk about that there. But also, like you, I had fantastic connection with a friend / a trainer the other day, and he just spoke about, we don't really connect very often because I'm always traveling, as you know. But every time we connect, it's really deep. But he was going through some stuff, and just the value of just a conversation of, hey, how are you going? What's happening? And also sometimes when someone says, how are you going? You go, okay. It's important to just wait for a little bit and actually say, are you really okay? And then things can come out, because we so often just go, hey, how's it going? Everyone just goes, I'm okay, without actually, just like a reflex response. And then when someone goes, I'm not okay, like, oh, I didn't expect that answer. But that's because you're not asking because you genuinely mean it, right? When you ask if you genuinely mean it, then you won't be shocked by that answer there. So yeah, I mean, we can go to that whole conversation, and I'm sure we'll touch on that as we speak to our guests today. As always, our valued listeners, Tanya and I, can keep on bantering about all these things forever and ever and ever, but we're not going to bore you, because we could, but that's never a bore, right? So we're going to introduce our guest this week. And as we always say, we try and scour the world and the country to find some people that we think are amazing. And as always, we think everyone is amazing, but we only have time to speak to one person at a time. And this week, we are very lucky and very privileged to have Nathan on our podcast. Welcome to our podcast, Nathan.
Kia ora, thanks for having me, guys. A pleasure.
Beauty, fantastic. The pleasure is ours. So to our listeners during the podcast, I might go Nathan, I might go Nate. We're just going to mix it up as we go along. So let's mix it up straight away. Nate, do you want to tell listeners a bit about who you are and where you're from at the moment and what you're doing?
Sure. Ko Ngongataha Te Manga, ko Utahina Te Awa, ko Te Rotorua Nui a Kahu Mata Momoe a Te Roto, no Rotorua Ahau, ko Nathan Tuku Ingawa. So kia ora everybody, my name's Nathan, effectively known as Nate or Nate Dog to many people. Born and raised in Rotorua, but Dunedin Ōtepoti is home to me now. It's been home for 6 years. So a wee while now. So yeah, it's real privilege to be on the podcast with you guys, and yeah, looking forward to just sharing my story and sharing any knowledge from my basket as well, I suppose, with you two today.
I'm sure there'll be lots of knowledge being coming out of that amazing basket of yours. And Nathan, what are you 6 years or 7 years into Dunedin? What are you doing at the moment while you're in Dunedin? And we'll go backwards. Where are you now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So my current role is Tautiaki Kaiawhina, so assistant warden at University Flats. Uh, so basically, I look after the pastoral care and event side of things for residents in uni flats here at the University of Otago. So managing around 700 or so students and university accommodation. So majority of our students are internationals, which is awesome after, not having international students for 3 years now with COVID. So yeah, that's my daytime role. And then alongside that, I also do some work with Southern Zone Rugby League, where the wellbeing lead there, which started off as part of my master's placement, and then have just continued doing some work there with them. So I look after all wellbeing initiatives across the South Island in the rugby league space, which is real awesome and something I'm real passionate about. And luckily enough, get to do in both my roles really is supporting people in their well-being.
What a beautiful segue there. I mean, you've got well-being with international and the other Uniflat residents, plus the well-being that you have with the rugby league players and staff as well. We'll go through that as well. If I said to Nathan, as a year 13, hey Nathan, in 7 years' time, this is what you'll be doing. What you have said to myself, Atane?
I don't know. I suppose if you asked me 7 years ago where I'd be, I wouldn't think I'd be on a podcast. I guess that's for sure. But yeah, I suppose my whole journey has been really ups and downs, I suppose, because I've had a lot of setbacks and a lot of things that haven't gone my way and things I've missed out on. But I think it's been real cool because a lot of the things I've gotten into and the roles I'm in now have come up differently to what I would expect to have happened 7 years ago, I suppose. And I'm in a completely different career space to where I thought I wanted to go when I was in high school. Wanting to be I thought I wanted to be a physio, but turns out you have to be good at health sciences for that, which I learned pretty quickly. I'm not built for sciences. But yeah, no, it's real cool to be in there. And I suppose sometimes you don't know where you're going to be. And I think that's the beauty of life sometimes, is that when, a door shuts or two doors shut in some cases of mine, another door opens and leads you down a completely different path. So yeah, very different to probably where I thought I'd see myself 7 years ago. And who knows what in 7 years' time where these pathways will lead as well.
Yeah, and there's so much there because, like you said, imagine if I said to you, you were exactly the same person 7 years ago to now, you'd be like, whatever, there's been no growth. It'd be pretty sad, right? And, you've touched on a couple of things there about, setbacks we might touch on through the podcast and some growth opportunities. What is it like growing up in Rotorua? For those of our listeners who are not from New Zealand, Rotorua is a smallish town.
Yeah.
Everything's in scale according in New Zealand versus the world. So in New Zealand, it's biggish, and the rest of the world is pretty tiny. What is that like for you growing up in that community? Because and to put in perspective, a lot of people from the outside see Rotorua as a place that has lots of gangs, and it's got two notions: adventure capital, all these amazing spas and thermal hot pools, and then the other side it's got a lot of poverty and a lot of the gang world. What is it like for you?
For sure. I suppose I was real lucky for me. It's always been home, and I love that place. And mainly the people there as well. The people are what make it such a awesome place. But yeah, born and raised there. I suppose for Rotorua, it's a very high Maori percentage population. So I was very fortunate to sort of grow up and be immersed in te ao Māori, te reo Māori, even though I was a Pākehā kid myself. So real lucky in that respect. I mean, going through high school, Rotorua boys, I suppose have many opportunities there. And so I was I'd say fortunate. And it was quite a different experience for me coming from Rotorua, where I'd lived for, my whole life. I mean, I moved down to Dunedin to study at university, and such a culture shock, I suppose, for me, where I'd come from an environment where I was, one of two sort of white boys in the class to come into uni, and it's like complete culture shock in terms of there's no Māori people around, or now is like the opposite, and I sort of struggled with that, I suppose, a bit in my first year at university in hausa residence, because as you sort of touched on, PJ, you know, Rotorua isn't a very well off town as well. And I would consider myself fortunate in terms of, you know, my parents worked pretty hard to make sure I had everything I needed to get through, you know, high school, and to be able to afford to go on sports trips and away on stuff like that. And so when I moved down to uni, yeah, as well as that culture shock, I was getting used to coming from a low socioeconomic high school, and a place like Rotorua to university, where people other people didn't quite understand what that was like, or how money operated in terms of that. Um, so yeah, it was real interesting. But I suppose looking back on it now, I'm real thankful for that, because it's been able to ground me and give me a great understanding to be able to support people, because I'm able to look at both sides, I suppose, where I've been fortunate enough to go to university where others may not have. From my hometown, and be able to experience that realm, I suppose, and also be able to connect with people back home and bring that knowledge and understanding, particularly in Te Ao Māori, which I think has been a huge asset, I'd say, for, you know, the line of work I work in, and the line of work I want to go into as well. So yeah, Rotorua, it's a very unique place, and very thankful for, you know, what I've been able to do, and to be able to get an opportunity to make it out of there as well, and to grow as a person and develop. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's there's so much there, because you know, you speak about the low socioeconomic perception that Rotorua has on one side, and the other side is also, like in every part of the world, there's there's the haves and the have-nots, and Rotorua is always seen as the have-nots, unless you're going to go there and have a good time at all the spas. But also, like you said, you know, you used the word lucky, but I don't know if it's the word lucky. I would say, you know, you grew up in a world that was immersed in Te Ao Māori, and I guess you don't know any different. That was the world you grew up in, and that's all you knew, because you're, hey, this is it. This is all I grew up in. And I guess that takes back to all of us. You know, we grow up in the world that we know, and whether it's good or bad or not, it's our norm, it's our world. And too many times the world tells us, hey, this is a bad place, it's a good place, but they haven't actually experienced that living. So for example, Tane growing up in Taranaki, you know, versus say Rotorua, two very different worlds. Even though Tane, you are Maori, and Nathan, you're born in a Te Ao Māori context, your worlds are very, very different the way you experience that, you know, which is really beautiful. And then the two of you, in fact, all three of us come to New Zealand where we have this amazing culture shock. Nathan from Rotorua, Tane from Taranaki, and me from Zimbabwe come here, and we're like, what the hell's going on here? This is a crazy, crazy world, which is the beauty of university. You know, I think a lot of people forget that universities, yeah, academics pretty awesome, whatever, that's all cool. But I think the biggest learning is the cultural intermingling of all these different ideas and philosophies. And so you don't agree with everybody, and you don't have to disagree with everybody, but it's just a crazy, crazy world. But come back to you, Nathan. Was university always on your horizons, or was it something that an opportunity came up to you and you're like, hey, I'm going to take it and go with it?
Yeah, a bit of an interesting story, I suppose. Like when I was in high school, I was very sporty, played a lot of sport, and then started specialising or playing more rep hockey in my later teen years. And it was through injuries, you know, I was seeing physios, and I was like, oh, this seems like a real cool job, you know, being a physio. You just massaging people, you know, talking to them every day, like involved in sport sort of stuff. So I think early on in high school, I was like, oh yeah, you know, physio, that's what I want to be when I grow up. You know, that's what I want to go study. I mean, as I went through the later years of high school, I started learning I wasn't too good at science, particularly chemistry, which was a wee challenge there. But I was better at writing subjects, and then one of my teachers, or a couple of my teachers, like, hey, if you considered doing law or something, because you're really good at speaking, you're good at English and history and stuff. And I was like, oh no, I haven't really considered it. I mean, so when I was going into that was like my final year, and I was like, oh, I don't know about physio, like with the chemistry, health sciences. So it was weird as well, because obviously for physiotherapy, it's either AUT or Otago, and I'm not a big fan of Auckland. It's just too big, too busy. So I'd always been set on sort of coming down to Otago to study for physio originally. But yeah, like I was saying, I sort of had this different perspective go in year 13 where, okay, maybe I won't be able to cope with, chemistry and physics and all that with health sciences. I've been told, I'd be good in doing law, but still wanted to do something with sport. So I decided, oh yeah, like looked into PE. Someone suggested it to me. I was like, cool, sweet. So yeah, I mean, enrolled in Otago, moved down here, started 2018. So I was doing a Bachelor of Physical Education and a Bachelor of Laws, which very different. You don't often see people ever doing those two combinations. So that was where my university journey began, really, was doing that. And I learned pretty quickly as well. I love the socio-cultural side of just sport, learning about people, how to get the best out of people in sport, what goes on behind the scenes, sort of all that sort of stuff. And we're still doing law, but I was like, oh, actually, I can't see myself studying law for another 4 years. So yeah, ended up dropping. Well, I've carried on doing first year law, didn't apply for second year law. I mean, that was at the time when the PE degree was being completely restructured. So I ended up carrying on doing PE, but as a Bachelor of Arts in Sport Development and Management. And within my first year, I learned about sociology, which I'd never heard of back home growing up, or, even it wasn't until my first year of university, I was like, oh, sociology stuff is pretty interesting. So ended up picking that up as a second major. I mean, yeah, so my university journey continued after first year. A BA with sport management and sociology. I mean, ended up finishing that 2 years ago now. I mean, just loved learning socio-cultural side of sport. I mean, I'd been working as a RA or a sub-warden in residential colleges for a number of years, so decided to move into a Masters of Sport Development and Management, so continue that education pathway, and did a lot of specialization and work in the wellbeing space. So, and I'm still sort of continuing that journey, just finishing my master's off now on a sort of part-time basis. But yeah, I suppose my university journey hasn't quite been straightforward, and I learned a lot along the way about myself, but also like what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, and sometimes I feel like you just don't know until you give it a go. I mean, like at the end of the day, I still have some good understanding of law from first year law, so it wasn't a complete loss doing something I didn't want to do. So yeah, it was real interesting, I suppose, my journey to university and journey through university there.
Yeah, and I think if we take a sample of 100 people that have the same story, that they came to university to do something, to do X, and then they come to university, they discover Y, and then they discover Z, and then like next story they're not doing X anymore, they're doing Y and Z, and then it's pretty crazy. But the thing is, you have to be open to explore that. Like you said before, you're all right, cool, sociology, what the hell is this here? If you had a closed-minded attitude, like, no, I'm not going to do this here, I'm just going to give it a crack. And I think that's important to go, hey, just give it a go. And what's the worst that could happen? You don't like,
100%. Yeah, 100%.
you don't like it, or you fail. Okay, whatever, who cares? You just, life still carries on, right? You learn something, and like you said, you did the laws 101. You decided you wanted to law, but you finished the laws 101, and even today, I'm sure there's some learnings in there that you might not actively put into practice, but it's at the back of your mind. And if you needed to, you could bring it out. Although I don't think I'm going to call you as my legal aid at any point in time, but that's cool. Don't worry about it.
Good idea. Yeah, I wouldn't do that either.
At the start of your intro, you said you had a couple of setbacks. What do you want to mention some of the setbacks that you faced as you have gone through the journey over the last few years?
Yeah, 100%. So I suppose it's more in the sort of job internship area for me. So I'd applied for a few summers, just different internships, thought I'd had the experience, was working in this area, thought, I'd had interviews for a few of them, thought I did really well. And then I was supposed to have that setback where had missed out, and that was you know, a big, like, I don't know what the word is, but big, oh, you know, wow, okay, like, am I not good enough? I thought I had that experience and stuff. I mean, even more recently at the start of the year, I had a setback in terms of a job application where I didn't get in. I was very surprised, and so having those setbacks, I suppose, yeah, it was quite a eye-opening moment. I mean, missing out on a few scholarships, you know, and having all these, I was like, oh man, you know, it's a bit of a bummer, and it does suck. I found those like pretty difficult to, you know, sort of get over and be like I've got all this, like what's missing, like what do I need to bring to be able to secure these like internships, these jobs, these scholarships, these other little things. But then at the same time, you know, because I've missed out on some of them, it's opened up a different door. And I think I sort of said earlier, you know, sometimes it's like one or two doors close, but then a different door opens and you go down a different pathway as well. And so yeah, I suppose like it's okay to have those things. Like they definitely suck, and it's a part of the journey of life. But it's, I suppose, how you get through those and bounce back, find your front, be resilient, and just, you know, sometimes having setbacks is a blessing in disguise. Like my job I'm in now probably would not have occurred because of, you know, the setback I had. So I'm real fortunate in that regard. And sometimes, you know, I do look back and be like, man, like, what if I'd got there and like my journey would have been a bit different, or I could have had some different experiences and opportunities. But like, yeah, I suppose it's all part of life. And I think once you learn that, you know, not everything's a perfect straight line path, that journey, then yeah, really.
Yeah, it's so crazy because, you know, it reminds me the other day, when I was doing my coaching teaching, somebody said to me, how do you control other people? And I was like, you can't control other people, but you can control how you react to something you control. So in your case, you know, you do the best that you can to apply for a job, and you can't control what they're looking for, but you can only control how you react. And obviously you're down and despondent. I mean, we're just humans. We're like, yeah, whatever, I didn't get a job, you don't know and celebrate. Okay, cool. But then it's the way you reflect. And like you said, you know, when one or two doors close, another one might open up. I remember a TV show I watched a few years ago. I don't know what it was, but I remember this thing where someone said, everyone notices on the doors that close, but they don't focus on the windows that open on the side. I was like, oh, this is very true. We always focus on the doors, but never the windows, because all houses have windows somewhere. So it's always stuck with me, and it's really, really awesome. Because, like you said, you have no idea. If you had got the job, you wouldn't be doing this today. And I'm not saying that was the we good or bad, but you just never know, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Life is a mystery.
Life is a mystery, exactly, and it'll keep being a mystery. I want to circle into other things. So those, I mean, setbacks are all part of life. And Tana, you've had a few setbacks as well, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. And like as Nathan says, you know, like you don't realize, like at the time it sucks, but you don't realize what other opportunities could come from it. You know, I think I had a similar experience last year where I got a setback of, you know, I wanted to do a job, but I didn't end up getting even to the interview stage. And I was like, well, what do I need to do when I've already got experience in that field? You know, to what more can I possibly do? But then I look at it now and I think, you know, some of the roles I've taken on, like my regional coaching position for the girls, you know, like that would have never opened up because I just simply wouldn't have had the time to be able to commit to that. So, you know, on the one side, yes, it sucks that door shut, but it means that I've got this whole other avenue now that I probably wouldn't have gone and seeked out if that opportunity, I had taken up that other opportunity. So it's all about reframing it, but it is challenging. And you know, like it's okay to accept that you are going to have setbacks as well, you know, because I think sometimes otherwise you get in that sense of everything, you know, like I'm always going to get everything. And then as soon as you get a setback, you go, oh, now what do I do? Because I've got so used to, you know, getting those positions because I have the experience. So yeah, it is a good thing to have a few setbacks along the way.
Yeah, it's part of life.
Yeah.
It's part of life. You said, Nathan, it's part of life. This is just how that journey of life goes. Talk about the journey of life, Nathan. Well-being. Let's talk about that there. How did you, why is that such a big part of you, I guess? It's not, which it is part of you, the whole well-being thing. Let's talk about
Yeah,
that there.
so it's a bit of a long story, but
We've got all the
obviously,
time. Got all the time. Go nuts.
like I said earlier, when I arrived in first year down here at Otago, I struggled a bit with those sort of cultural difference and people coming from, more different backgrounds to myself, I suppose. And it was my RAs or subwardens at the time who really helped me get through it. I felt real good connection sort of, and even like what Tane was saying right at the start in your guys' little intro there, how important connection is and being able to connect with people and like that. And I felt that strong connection in my first year. And then second year I went flatting, and by the end of second year I was, I want to be a sub warden as well, pay back, that favor I experienced that from those RAs, and I want to make sure that other people experience that connection and sort of, I don't know, just that pastoral care and that support that I experienced. So then I became a sub warden in 2020 before the pandemic arrived. And so, I was fortunate enough to work as a sub warden during that, where, national lockdown, I went from having a floor of 26 students to only 2 staying, and going through that and experiencing that, and I suppose being in a position where I was providing pastoral care and support to other students, and being that mentor and stuff. That really set me on my journey in the wellbeing space, and I really enjoyed that, and felt 2020, it's been a bit of a crap year with the lockdowns and COVID, so we'll do it again next year, 2021, and just continue to enjoy it, to support our tauira coming through, and just being there on people's journey. That was just awesome. I got to see people grow from like their first day of university moving into like the end of the year, and they've got all these good friends, they're flat, they're real happy and grounded in who they are, and just being part of that journey, supporting them. And then so 2021 was the end of my undergraduate year, and then decided I might do a master's of sport development and management, and I really enjoyed the wellbeing side of stuff with my pastoral care background, and working in a hausa residence, and then just seeing the need as well within sport. There's a lot of high profile athletes, I think to like Olivia Podmore, the cyclist, and a few other incidences of in the high performance sport sector where athlete well-being wasn't prioritized and they weren't cared for, didn't have that holistic well-being and support necessary to be able to thrive, not only on the sports field or whatnot, but in the rest of life as well. And that just really resonated with me. I was like, man, like why are these things not in place? Why are we not supporting these athletes? Like, it frustrated me a little. So I decided to do my master's, did a lot of work in the wellbeing space there. So I did a wee research piece with New Zealand Super Rugby personal development managers, where I looked into spiritual wellbeing, taha wairoa, just understanding, what that is, because it's part of the Te Whare Tapawha well-being model. We've got our 4 pillars, and everyone understands, physical, mental health, social health as well, but what spiritual mean. And I think everyone's probably aware that we need a balance of all 4 of those pillars to be able to live well, and live happy lives where we're able to thrive. So I got to do some work research in there, just interviewing PDMs, and being like, hey, what is your understanding of spiritual well-being? What does that look like in your Super Rugby environment? How do you practically care for that? What do you do to support athletes? And that was real awesome. That was like, I just so enjoyed it, because that's the area I'm real passionate about, and an area of work I want to go into as well. So to be able to talk to those people who not only helped me with my research there, but were happy to talk things outside of that with me, like, hey, this is how my journey went, this is how we support athletes in this way, And then as part of my master's as well, as a more practical coursework master's, so I did a 360-hour placement with Southern Zone Rugby League, where I've been working in the wellbeing space there as well. So not quite high performance, but more community level. So developing like social media strategies, promoting wellbeing. Recently just relaunched a wellbeing page on our website where we've been able to connect with a whole bunch of organizations across the South Island and all our districts, so that our people can go there and be like, oh, okay, these are the different support services I can get help for. And then, yeah, so coming up, especially this year, I'm still doing work with Southern Zone, where I'm leading some coaching courses, touching on a little bit of sort of confidence, motivation, development days with our youth, where I'm going over mental well-being. What does that look like? Nutrition, sort of sleep, hydration, as well as some mental health workshops through New Zealand Rugby League. So I suppose, yeah, for me, you know, well-being is just, I'm super passionate about it. Like I love to see, you know, people be at their best, and to be able to support them on their journey, I think is really, really important, because, you know, we can all look like we're doing fine, but behind that, you know, people need support in a whole bunch of different areas of their life. So just to be able to, you know, be that person, to be, hey, how you doing? Connect them in with, you know, what support they need, I think is just so awesome. And I just love that area, you know, being able to help people on their journey there.
That's massive, and it's a testament to you as a person, because as I was doing my research around you, Nathan, I came across this here. I came across your Trust Power Community Awards, and one of the quotes that was on there was that Nathan says it's the happiness you can bring people when they excel in what they're doing is what motivates you. And that was you when you were in high school all those years ago, and it seems like that thread has just carried on for you, you know, the whole way
Don't
through.
even remember saying that
Yeah,
quote, but yeah.
there we go. Isn't it crazy? Like, you know, it's not scripted. The way you ended that last bit is exactly what you said 5 years ago, or sorry, 7 years ago when you got that youth award. So it's a real testament to who you are, and we're very lucky, and I guess everyone's very lucky to have you in their corner. I do have a question for you, and the question I had is, well-being is so massive. Like, it's going to, like, well-being, like you said, it could be from sleeping to nutrition to connection to anything under the sun. What if you were to summarize well-being for you? What is from your research and understanding? And we're not saying that there's one way or the right way, but for you, what do you think is one of the most important pillars of well-being that you think everyone should try and incorporate into their lives if they can?
Well, it's a tough one because, like you said, it is a big subject, but I suppose when you break down what well-being is, because it is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, and sometimes, you know, it is quite hard to know what that actually means. But I suppose well-being is, are you living well? Are you thriving? And it's a continuous journey, right? So like today I could be not feeling that great. Next day I could be much better. You know, it's a continuum. We're all on that journey together, I suppose. We're all on our own individual journeys, but we're in it together with other people. I think it's just important with well-being is that you recognize that while you're on your own individual journey, you are doing it with other people. You've got people who care about you, who will do anything for you, who will sit down, you know, have a chat, have a coffee, you know, check in on you. Like, there are people that care and will want to see you thriving, living well. And I think that's probably, one of my biggest things I'd say to anybody is that, you know, you're never alone. You're always cared for. There's always people there to support you with whatever you're going through, whether it's your mental well-being, your physical, your social, your spiritual. You know, there's always others that want to be a part of that journey with you.
Isn't that beautiful that this actually connects right back to what Tanya said with connection? You know, each one of those things that you spoke about is basically connection, and to realize that that we are connected in whether it's spiritual, whether it's nutrition, whether it is mental, whether it's physical, that when you do it with other people, you're going to feel much better. Or even if you're feeling pretty shitty or not the best, just by connecting and touching with maybe a friend or a personal trainer or a trainer or just someone to go, hey, not vibing here. The reason I asked you that question about well-being is because, as you said, there's just so many definitions out there. There's so many ways to get well-being. But I loved how you said it. How are you feeling well today? Simple as that. There. Do you not have to go into, is it my mental? Am I feeling well today or not? And if you're not, then you can think about breaking it right down to what it might be. But if you can go, yep, I'm feeling well, then hey, life is all good at that particular point in time. So it is a really, really beautiful synergy and summary there. Now, let's talk about your Pan Pacific Games. What is that like? You got involved with the Pan Pacific Games when you were with Samoa, when you were the Pacific Games a few years ago. Were you involved in that?
Yeah, that was a pretty cool opportunity. So,
and how did you get involved in that?
So early in my university years, I was involved with an organization called Athletes in Action. So mainly based up in Auckland, and university campuses there. It's a faith-based organization that uses, I suppose, sport as a platform to care for people and support them with their faith journey as well. So yeah, I got involved with them and very fortunate enough to support raise a lot of money, which didn't think was possible, to be able to go over to Samoa to the Pacific Games, which was unreal opportunity. You know, I got to experience a whole different culture, connect with so many different Pacific Island cultures, really. Like there was all these little islands I'd never heard of before, and to learn about them and to meet athletes from them was pretty cool. And just, you know, sit down, have a yarn with them, catch up with their story and be like, hey, you know, how are you going? Is there anything we can do to support you? Obviously, like, you know, you're away from home, like what does that look like? So yeah, it was a real cool opportunity. Crazy because that was like pre-COVID. So it seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, awesome. And can I ask you, you can choose to ignore this question now. Is faith a big part of your life? You know, the reason I ask is because you mentioned that was pretty big for your spiritual well-being, and you know, you mentioned now that a faith-based organization. Is faith a strong pull in your life, or is it something you're just interested in?
Yeah, definitely. It was something that I sort of was part of my family growing up, and then got to reconnect with that in my early years of university there, and it's still a part of my life for sure. So yeah, but I think it's good, like the values, and it's able to ground me and give me a different perspective as well of things, and to be able to support people as well.
Yeah, I only ask because, you know, the world is a crazy place, and you know, there's this whole battle about religion versus spirituality versus faith, and you know, we see the census data showing that religion is going on the down, and people are not declaring as their faith anymore. And it's just interesting. It's just interesting for people for anyone to observe that and see what the implications for that are. I mean, we'll never know. I mean, we might see in a few years' time. Well, there might be no implications. We have no idea, right? But everyone has their attachment. And I guess when you were doing your Super Rugby research, what did you find there? Because you focus on spiritual well-being. What is that for you? Because it can be so interesting for you.
So I think there's quite often a lot of misconnotations as well. You know, when you hear the word spiritual, it's just religion, faith, but that's not the case. Everyone has a spiritual well-being, and that could be whether that's your transcendental, so with a god or higher being, your connection to others, your connection to yourself, being grounded in who you are, understanding who you are, where you come from, your whānau, your whakapapa, and your culture. There's a connection to your environment. So for a lot of people, you know, even for myself, like one of my favorite things to do is just run along the Otago Harbour there. And then what I would do is just sit down for, like, you know, 5 minutes, just taking that view, you know, being outside, being able to connect with nature, get out of, you know, North Dunedin bubble and stuff like that. So like, I think it's real important for everyone to know that, you know, you do have a spiritual well-being, and it doesn't have to be faith. Like, that can be what it is for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean if that's what it is for me, that's not going to be what it is for you, PJ, or for you, Tane. It's going to be different for everybody, but recognizing that we still need something like that, and that connection again, connection to something, whether it's your environment, others, higher beings. So that was real cool. I was able to sort of look into it and see that there was these different areas of spiritual well-being, and for some people it can be a connection to multiple of those. For others, it's not. But we're all on that journey again. So recognizing, some people don't even realize that their spiritual well-being is actually, being mindful, walking a dog, spending time with family, like simple things like that are overlooked. And it's not spiritual, but that's what spiritual is. It's being able to fill your body, fill your soul, and that sort of, I suppose, feel good factor.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember, because we have been so indoctrinated to believe that it has to be a certain way, and it's not that way. It's not spiritual, or it's not religious. And Tanya, I'll bring you in. How do you look after yourself in your spiritual well-being? Because I know what you do, but you do tons of things. Just before we go into the podcast, you said you just hopped off to the pools just to wind down as well.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about being able to connect with myself and my values, and just finding time within the day to really reflect on what's happening and being more present, because I do so many of these roles and other things. It's always kind of, you're always pursuing that what's next. Oh, I've got this next. Oh, and then I've got rugby training, and then I need to go get groceries. And, like it's always that constant, like, what's next, what next? But trying to find, and as Nathan says, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes in your day to actually sit down with yourself, ground yourself, and go, okay, I'm here. I don't have to worry about anything else right now, because I just need to focus on myself and what I'm doing for today. And, reflecting on your well-being as well, about, am I doing okay? If not, okay, what do I need to work on? If I am, cool, let's just keep getting it, So that's something I really focus in on. But I think also, as Nathan says, being able to identify what works for you, because I think for me, what I look at as spirituality is connecting to my Māoridom. And I think that's because I'd never really grew up with it fully, that now that I have a true essence of what it is and what it means to me, I connect into that. But as he says, there's everybody has a different level and a different way of connecting with their spirituality. And because we look at it, as you say, in this traditional way of, oh, it's religion or it's faith, everything else gets put on the back burner, or we put it into another category. And so it's just finding, really figuring out for yourself what spirituality means for you, and being able to pursue it. Because I think, as we say, because it's such a blurred line between each and every one of us, we kind of let it sit on the back burner compared to, physical, mental, and social well-being, because those we can easily define as, this is what it is, and this is what I need to do to ensure it's okay.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's the paradox of all these crazy boxes that we have in our lives, that if you don't fit a certain box, then it's not that thing there. It's got to be something else. But things like spirituality can be anything to anybody, whatever grounds you in. It goes back to what you said, Nathan, before. How well do you feel? And if walking a dog is your spiritual practice every day, there's no one can tell you that's right or wrong. That's the way it is.
For sure.
Talking about what's right or wrong, and talking about connection, and talking about all the cool things you've been up to, I'm going to go back to young Nathan. Tell us about your time as a thespian in the whole Shakespeare festival world. What is that like for you?
Really be doing your research on me back in the day,
I don't play games.
Yeah, I suppose back in high school I was involved with a bit of everything really. So I was pretty sporty, but also quite like drama, theatre, sports and stuff. And yeah, did a bit of debating as well. And I was real fortunate with some of those opportunities. It gave me these skills, people skills, but also to be able to speak, deliver courses, speak in front of people. Yeah, pretty fortunate. Involved in a few musicals back in high school as well. Not so much anymore. Those days are unfortunately back in the glory days of high school where I peaked a bit. Nah. But yeah, no, that was real cool and pretty fortunate as well. My partner, I met her in high school actually for a production, and that was 7-8 years ago, and we're still together now, like 7 years later, which is awesome. So yeah, it's pretty cool that I got those opportunities in high school, and yeah, just to broaden my horizons, really get involved in all sorts, give it a go. It's lots of fun. Yeah, it's all part of high school, really. And in that way, if you're involved in so much stuff, you don't have to go to class as much as well, which is great. Not that
There's
anyone should take that away, but
there's the truth right there. There's the truth right there.
yeah.
Nathan, Nathan, what are you doing? Oh, I can't come to class today because I'm doing all these things. Okay, cool. Awesome. I touched on that there because what I want a listener to see is that you don't have to be siloed into any one thing, because you played high level hockey, you were a very sporty person, but that didn't stop you from getting onto the stage and doing some theater stuff, especially for the males that are out there. Sometimes in New Zealand, and I've seen this quite a lot, that males, you can't do that. It's either one or the other, and if you're doing one, you can't do the other. If you're doing the other, you can't do the one. And there doesn't seem to be a marriage of the both, that it's okay to do both or okay to do none. So I bring that up because you're a clear example of someone who's done both, and it hasn't defined who you are as a person, but you've learned skills from both of those to take you to where you are today. Probably as you do things like you said before, just by doing the thespian stuff now, you feel the confidence when you're giving your coaching stuff. You might not be acting, but hey, the confidence has come through all those years. I guess everything's acting in life, but it's giving you the confidence there. So it's really, really awesome to see you doing that there. And now we're going to switch from that to your current role, which is very, very different. Like you said before, it's the first time that international students have come to New Zealand after a very long time. And as a young person, as a young adult, I guess, with internationals coming through, it's a whole different ballgame altogether. And the reason why I bring this, it's quite a circular conversation. You grew up in a place where you grew up with Te Maori and Maori culture. You come to New Zealand where you meet you come to Otago where you meet a whole plethora of different people from New Zealand. And now you're in a role where you have a whole global range of people working with you or around you. Isn't that, it's a crazy trajectory for you as a young adult. And what is it like for you, seeing people from all around the world that you get to interact with, and the word of the day is connect with every day?
Yeah, it's real cool. I'm pretty privileged to be working in this area, and it's amazing because you learn even so much about your own culture, like what we call things, like the names we have for things. We just don't really think about it. I mean, someone will be like, "Oh, a trash can." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you call it a trash can. We call it a rubbish bag," sort of thing. Or like the other day we're out somewhere and there's lolly cake, and I was like, "Oh, actually, is lolly cake just like, do you have that in the States?" And they're like, "No, I've never had it." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is like my favorite thing. Like, wow, I've never really thought about it being probably a New Zealand delicacy, I'd say." So yeah, it's real cool, like just to be able to meet people from different parts of the world and just learn about your own culture as well within that. Just those little things that we take for granted, I'd say, living in New Zealand. So it's pretty cool, and I suppose it's been a challenge for me as well because as I touched on, I was a subwarden for 3 years in a residential college. I mean, to move from living in with people, you're seeing them every day, to a uni flats environment where you're not as connected, I'd say. You don't see your students all the time. You don't walk past them in the hallway every day. It's sort of like either they come to you or you have to reach out to them, sort of thing, for things, which I think I've struggled a little bit with at first, because it's very different, despite it being the same sort of division and same job role, I suppose, as what assistant wardens are in colleges, but it's very different because we have such a different outreach to reach out to our students and to get them to events and stuff like that, which has been a challenge as well, but also a cool learning experience. I think that's real cool because maybe I was too comfortable in a college environment, and so now I get to go out there, meet internationals, do stuff for them, support them in their journey, and they're only here for most of them a semester, but we want to make it the best semester they ever had, and that they can go back home and be like, man, Otago was just awesome. There's all these things to do, and just make sure that it's a pleasurable experience coming to Aotearoa for the short time that they're here.
And I guess also for you, the other thing is the different age dynamic. Because when you're in a subwarden, they're all 17, 18-year-olds, and as they come as internationals, they could be any age really.
Yeah,
Which is very,
that's
very different,
real
right?
interesting because
Yeah.
most of them will be like second, third year exchange students. So they're
Yeah.
like, a few years younger than me, like 20, 21 sort of thing. But then we've got the different end of the spectrum where we also host, postgraduate students, a lot of them PhD students. So we've got people who are 30s, 40s, people with young families as well that live in some of our flats because they're studying towards their PhD. And yeah, it's real interesting because sometimes I have had to have conversations with people and they're literally twice my age about, like, oh, okay, have you talked to your flatmates about this issue, like sort of stuff like that, which I find real interesting because I obviously you'd think, oh, this is just a 19-year-old sort of thing, moving away from home for the first time to university, but like, yeah, I think that's been real eye-opening as well, as learning that there's other people older than me who sort of go through the same challenges that first years do.
Yeah, it's crazy. Humans are just humans, right? Humans are just
Yeah,
humans. Yeah,
yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah, that's real interesting.
Crazy. But I'm sure it's fun. And I like what you said there about, giving the most experience, the best experience that they've had while they're here. And we've said this many times before on our podcast, Hey Tane, about the Maya Angelou quote, which is people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you make them feel. And I think, that's I guess that's what you're trying to do in all your roles that you have had, from what you do with Southern Zone to what you've done with your masters to what you're with your subwarden, to what you're doing right now. So it's a really important part of your mana, I guess. Nate, we've been speaking for almost an hour, and we can keep talking because you have some fascinating stories. Um, our podcast is called Boss of Knowledge, and every week we invite our guests to give us one piece of knowledge that we think our listeners and myself and Tana should put into our basket of knowledge. What do you reckon you would like to tell us and give us? What piece of knowledge?
Ooh, put me on the spot. It is a tough one.
The
I
reaction we always
suppose,
get.
yeah, I suppose it would just be like, if there are setbacks and things don't go your way, that, it's all right to have these things, and it's not the end of the world, like I've said a couple times, two doors may shut, but another door opens, and that's just all part of the journey that we go through, and it's recognizing that, hey, we have these setbacks, but how we are able to bounce back, be resilient, and get through those, and go down maybe a different pathway to what we expect. I think that's the beauty of life, I'd say, is that, the unexpected does happen, but it's our ability to be able to cope with that, bounce back, and see what else is out there when things don't quite go our way. So yeah, don't be afraid if you do fail or things don't go your way, because other opportunities pop up which you have no idea about. Like, I think it comes back to what you said at the start. Where did you see yourself 7 years ago? I'm like, I could have never told you I'd be working in this role, or both these roles, where I get to support people in their hauora, their well-being, and on their journey, whether it's rugby league or I will stay in here at Otago for a semester. So yeah, I think that's the beauty of life, really, is that you don't know what's ahead, or what opportunities, when one door shuts, another door opens.
Yeah, and I love that. Life is life. We want life to be a straight plan. We want life to go, I want this, so therefore this will happen. But life doesn't work like that. Expect the unexpected, as you said, and it goes back to how do you react to if something doesn't go according to plan. And you can always react and complain and moan about it and blame other people. Cool, some of us do that there. Or you can go, actually, this has happened. What can I learn from it? Yeah, I'm going to be sad for a few days, and I'm just going to bounce and keep on. And like you said before, 2 days, two doors might close, but one tiny door might open somewhere else. You just got to take the opportunity. Beautiful. Tony, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Oh, I think it's just been a great conversation to look into the space. And I guess the two takeaways I've taken from Nate is, the first thing about being adaptable, as he talks about these setbacks, being able to, as you say, it's about your response and how you look at that. And that takes time, and it takes experience of knowing that setbacks aren't the end of the world. But I guess you only learn that through having that setback in the first place. And I think the other thing that's quite cool is, you've identified your passion quite early, around this wellbeing space. And so now you're able to do that in very different ways. If you think of your assistant warden role and then your role in Southern Zone, they're completely different, but they're both, centered around wellbeing, which I guess draws into the bigger questions, especially when people are making that transition into work or into study, is about it's not so much about that job title. It's more about, you know, what is it that your true passion is, whether it's wellbeing, whether it's helping young people, you know, identifying that, then you have a much wider spectrum to allow these opportunities to come your way. So it's been, a really good conversation to be a part of.
Yeah, no, beautiful. I love the way you said that. I love the way you've summarized that. You know, it's not about the job title or the job role, it's about your passion. And, you know, I still have to have a bit of a chuckle that that year 13 you, that quote that we said, and masters Nathan are basically the same, just said it a bit differently. And like you said, you had no idea you even said that all those years ago. But that, like Tana said, like Tana said, that shows that your values, the true values, have stayed the same the whole way through, even though you've gone through so much in the last 7 years. So that's really, really beautiful. Beautiful. Any last words, Nathan, before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you guys for having me on here, and just, if anyone has like any questions, whether it's about wellbeing or spiritual wellbeing, like I'm happy to have a chat and you know, point people in the right direction, support people as well. So yeah.
Beautiful. No, thank you for jumping on. It's been a real privilege. I mean, for full disclosure, I've been pretty lucky to have worked alongside Nathan in a couple of things with Hands on Otago, which again is student focused. So and Tanya has worked with Nathan as well, probably been in the same P school together. So I'm very lucky, very privileged to have you on here for the last hour or so. And what we'll do is, if you want to send us some resources, we'll chuck it in the show notes. So if you want to reach out and have a chat to you, or reach out to what spiritual well-being and things like that is, we'll chuck them in the show notes. So look out for that there. To our listeners, I'm sure you enjoyed this conversation. If you didn't, why not? And I'm sure you all picked up something wise. If you didn't, you'll listen again, because there's tons of knowledge in this podcast here. Until next time, remember to keep safe, keep smiling, and don't forget to feed something into your past knowledge. Till then, ka kite. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.